Literary versus genre. It's a conflict that never really existed, much like the Holocaust. No, wait. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. It's a conflict that never should have existed, much like the Holocaust. I'm sorry, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm not Hitler after all. A horribly offensive intro has a purpose, I swear. So imagine that the Holocaust was written as a novel. Not to say that the Holocaust is fiction and it only existed as a novel. Let's say that the real events of the Holocaust were fictionalized in a novel form. Okay, just want to make sure I get that clear. Now this book would quite obviously be categorized as a war novel, right? Alongside books like City of Thieves by David Benioff, A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, and the amazing Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, all of which are war novels. But they are literary as well. What? How can this be? Genre versus literary. These terms, genre and literary, are not mutually exclusive categories. In fact, every novel is genre. Every novel is genre. Every novel is genre. One more time. Every novel is genre. Genre is just a fancy term that means category. Simple as that. So what does literary fiction mean then? It's basically fiction that considers itself more than just a vehicle for entertainment. Literary fiction challenges the reader to confront, social norms, challenges the reader to appreciate language on a heightened level, or just challenges a reader to think. Think of the term literary as simply an overlay to existing genres. This is a concept that I first learned about and started to really appreciate after I interviewed the author Brian Evanson for the Velvet Podcast, which I'll link that audio interview down below if you want to check it out. So I think rather than discuss books as genre versus literary, it might be more appropriate to discuss them as literary versus non-literary. Although, that does put an implied priority or an implied importance on the term literary, since the non-literary version is really just the capital O other of literary, but I digress. Otherwise, you could potentially talk about them in a way that a lot of critics do by just saying literary versus mainstream or literary versus commercial fiction. I like those terms a little bit better, but not much. Okay, so back to the Holocaust. A man can dream, can he? Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, I promise. Okay, so I would argue that any novel dealing with the war or written about the war would be considered a literary novel simply by virtue of its content. When you write about a topic like a war, or specifically the Holocaust, you can't do it without forcing the reader to think about real human suffering, right? There's an evolution in the language, right? I mean, I know that there's a difference between the term genre as an adjective to describe a type of book, and then a genre as a noun that's really used as a classifier. I know there's a difference, and I know in common usage when someone uses the term genre to say that is a genre book rather than it belongs to a specific genre, the implication there is that that book sort of fits into a more accessible category of fiction. So there's maybe accessible and inaccessible might be another distinction to make, and that's probably what most people are thinking of when they think of the term genre, because a lot of times, especially fans of what people consider genre fiction, are anti-literary fiction, because literary fiction oftentimes comes across as self-important and dull, and it definitely can be. To satisfy my earlier statement about how every novel is genre, every novel is genre, every novel is genre, to satisfy that, I would say that most of those books that people tend to find boring would be categorized as maybe domestic fiction, because a lot of times it's fiction that takes place in a home, and when you have two characters, especially two characters who are married and know each other, it's very easy to I don't want to say very easy, I guess it's necessary to elevate the situation above the simple plot conventions, because if you just have two people in a room and you're trying to write a plot-driven story around that, it's not going to work. You've got to get inside the heads of the characters, and you've got to sort of manipulate the characters and really in turn force the reader to be manipulated by the characters. Domestic fiction, a lot of times one of the pejorative terms I think people use is kitchen sink drama. That can make sense, something that's kind of it takes place in a domestic setting. Academic fiction would be another one, and that's fiction that takes place at an academy, not fiction used for academic purposes. So A Straight Man is a great novel by Richard Russo that people would, I think, consider That definitely has literary qualities, and that's its purpose, but it largely takes place on a college campus. Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon is another one. So those kinds of books, I think people who are fans of what would traditionally be termed genre fiction would find those books probably pretty boring. But they are a genre. They are a genre. They are a genre. Give your 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 bits, whatever you want in the comments below, and it's, maybe we can start kind of a discussion on this whole thing. It's a never-ending discussion. It'll never end. Not that I ever want it to. When it's being talked about, if there's people talking about it, that means that it's important in some sense. So give me your ideas, your thoughts on the topic in the comments below. Also, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed by clicking a button over my shoulder, one of the two. Also, like the video if you liked it. Dislike it if you did not like it. Middle like it if that's a possibility on your screen, and if it is, screenshot that, because that would be awesome.